summer camp, specifically for youth who've experienced foster care and adoption. About 15 years ago, I was volunteering, and a camper asked me a question that opened the door to a new level of hope that I didn't know was possible this side of the grave. It's like 90 degrees out, midday. There's a new bouncy house at the lake. We're on the trail on our way to the beach. And out of nowhere, 13-year-old camper, adoptee asked me, "Hey, Cam, have you ever felt angry that your birth mom gave you away?" Now, before I share my answer, I gotta say, I wouldn't have the privilege of serving the adoptee community as a published author, a licensed clinical counselor in private practice, if it weren't for my mentors, colleagues, adoptee elders, peers, friends, my birth and foster families in Korea, even my spouse, children, and adoptive parents who've all, each in their own ways, pioneered and demonstrated aspects of today's idea, which is this: it takes a village to relinquish a child, and another one to keep them from talking about what happened. A lot of people have to be in on it. Thankfully, though, we can be different. Today I'm going to show you how. Now, you've heard of the term financial literacy, emotional literacy. Adoption literacy is a framework to shield us from misinformation and to help us better understand and uplift adoptees wherever they are in the world. Even decrease adoption throughout the world when we think about innovations to keep families intact. It's all rooted in this one belief that if a child must experience the trauma of being separated from their families, temporarily or permanently, we can be the village to help them tell that story and heal from it too. Okay, so a little vocal warm-up to help it come alive for us, but I need your help to finish these lyrics. I'm gonna sing the first line. I'm gonna point to you. That's your cue to sing the second line. Okay? Minneapolis, you've got this. Here we go. A, B, C, D. E, F, G. Yes, thank you. Adoption literacy is a community song. We internalize it, we practice it throughout our lives from womb to tomb. And there are 4 core relational cues that we can practice, and none of these have to be linear. Applications are infinite, can even be adapted to serve other marginalized identities, but they all flow from these 4 core relational cues. And here's your first one: humanize adoptee narratives. Okay, so back to our walk. Now, I know as adoptees, we don't owe anyone our life stories on the spot or anywhere, but I could tell in this context between adoptees, there's something just a little bit different going on. We were walking down the trail, and I could tell the typical cliches and the statistics just weren't cutting it anymore. So I just told them the truth. Yeah, man, there's more to it, I think. But yeah, I have felt that way. But how are you doing with all of that? Then something surprising happened. I learned that he had never asked that question to another person before. I was the first one, besides him, to witness it. To be honest, as a Korean adoptee, I too, along with him, was wondering if there was anyone else on that path with him, and what words existed beyond grateful or angry that could even begin to describe the nuances of what he was going through that season. Because objects can't grieve or wonder about where they came from, but humans can. Objects can't lament or rage against preventable inequities that tear families apart, but humans can. We can. Thankfully, no one here in this audience would ever try to teach a child that you're only allowed to use vowels to communicate and get through life, right? So it is with adoption literacy. You're widening the scope of what adoptees are allowed to think and feel and say and do in response to being separated from their families, histories, cultures, and then adopted into someone else's. And throughout our lives, you're helping us cultivate skills and strengths and language to become expert leaders in that process. And that leads me to our second cue. Own your part in this story. It's also a human one. During our camp training, our director pointed up to the whiteboard a bunch of stick figures and a little one in the background. And he said, "You've actually got a lot of hats to wear, but that's basically your one job this summer. Make more space for the adoptee voice." He's pointing to the heart of our program. Because remember, it takes a village to cover up the hard parts about being an adoptee, and another one to bury the parts of us that existed before we were relinquished. I was a son before I was adopted. I was Ihisong before I became Kamli Small. And during my reunion with my mom in Korea as an adult, I learned those macro scale realities go deep. She was telling me about adoption agencies, recruiters, government, military, the church. But for us today, for y'all, your role is to help unbury those testimonies. So here are just a few questions from our campers that were able to breathe once we gave more space for them. In my grade, I'm the only Asian, the only adoptee. People in my class make stories up about Asians and their cultures. The teacher laughs with the other students and won't help me. What do I do? Why do we get given up for adoption? When you're depressed and feel that everyone is against you, and you feel not worth it, want to end your life, how do you be strong and get through it? Now, there's no single adoptee story. That's important. And you don't need perfect answers to any one of them. Your job is to simply make more space for the adoptee voice so that they can be brought out and witnessed in the light and be met compassionately with the resources they need to flourish. And that leads me to your third cue. Promote adoptee-specific resources throughout our lifespan. What if it was more than just the right combination of food and shelter? Love conquers all can be an out-of-this-world kind of tool, amen. But that person on the trail beside you needs that love to be wonderfully specific. And I'm thinking about my campers going home in a few days. There are some bare minimum layers of support that they wish their villages knew about. And I love acronyms, so you can think about my hidden love language, M for micro. Adoptees need tools that destigmatize mental health support and honestly address how history, loss, early adversity, adoption can have an impact on nervous system development, brain and body functioning, racial and ethnic socialization, identity, birth search, reunion, ethical DNA testing here in the US, but also throughout those communities around the world who relinquished us so that we can find one another. And then quality language interpretation skills, quality language interpretation services for when we do. H is for healthcare. Adoptees need access to their own health records. And they need access to targeted health screenings, especially when those health records are kept from them or falsified, which happens more often than it should. L is for legal. We're thinking about legislative oversight on laws ranging from the ways we treat birth family before, during, and after relinquishment, original birth certificates, immigration rights. You can look up the Adoptee Citizenship Act going through Congress right now. Even reparations from adoption agencies that are operating illegally, currently under investigation abroad and here in the US. One more L, lifelong. That means more resources and community interventions designed specifically for and by adult adoptees. Because we grow up. Hi, nice to meet you. There are some vibrant grassroots organizations actively dedicated to creating these lifelong spaces for these unique and necessary conversations. So please do what you can to invest in developing those lifelines deep and wide, those adoptee-led lifelines. And that leads me to your fourth and final core relational cue for adoption literacy. Elevate adoptees into positions of influence. Now, this cue has multidisciplinary implications. For today, right now, I'm inspired by the work of critical adoption studies scholars, Drs. Amanda Baden, Adam Kim, Holly McGinnis, and Jaron Kim, who drew attention to a long-standing barrier that adoptees face in the context of research and scholarship. power. That's what keeps us stuck in a dangerous cycle of information poverty and false portrayals of adoption. It's almost like the adoptee version of the adjacent possible. Okay, a lot of you know that academia is saturated with white adoptive parents and non-adoptees who are often granted the dignity and the funding to pose their research questions, which rarely collect data on adult adoptees and birth families, while adoptees' research questions are often dismissed or criticized. That teaches us that adoptees are only good enough to be observed, not the observer. So what can we do about that? Well, we can keep learning from adoptive parents and non-adoptees, of course, we have to. And you can ask, what if those in power didn't just share their power by allowing us to participate in their research studies, but instead, they sponsored and wholeheartedly edified adult adoptees into positions where we could be distinguished as principal investigators, where adoptees got to lead the discovery and dissemination of knowledge critical to the thriving of our communities. It doesn't mean that we all agree just because we're adoptees, but that cultural shift, it does elevate our voices as significant in dialogues and decisions that significantly impact our lives. Even if, and especially when those dialogues mature past traditional forms of westernized research methods. So increasing adoptee influence, it means we're widening the avenues for data collection and storytelling, like poetry, music, film, accurate media representation, all of that. So mobilize your positions of advantage within our community to inspire, request, and fund adoptees to lead these reparative processes. Because adoption literacy, it belongs in camp spaces for sure, but it also needs to be alive for adoptees when they leave camp. And speaking of leaving camp, it's our last night. S'mores, fire's dying down, clear night sky. Some adoptees are hanging out, singing, signing notebooks, and a closing song fades into the speakers. It's profound. Every summer I see this. They get up, and they circle around, arms around each other's shoulders, 50, 60, 70 adoptees just swaying back and forth to this one song, Lean on Me by Bill Withers. It's an affirmation. Each one of them hearing it for themselves and also reminding one another, you're not alone. You're not a bad person for having questions and reactions to loss, trauma, cultural assimilation, displacement, resource deserts, perpetual disconnections. I see you. Now, I know camp isn't some ultimate solution for any of us, I get that, but here's a group of adoptees standing in the middle of nowhere, being reminded that their stories matter everywhere they go, that our origins are even worth pursuing, not just for the substance that it can bring today, but also for the hope that it extends to the future. My children are confidently and joyfully exploring their connections to Asia because I was finally able to begin that path for myself as an adult. And that's why I'm here today, to help make that pathway an option for as many people as we can in all the places where camp isn't, because no one in any generation should have to face that road alone. I'm rooting for former foster youth currently, adoptees, wherever you are, to find the others. So thankful I was able to. Realize your strengths. Tap into the womb-knit potentials that exist within each one of you. Burst out of your acorn skins. When the environment is in our favor, and especially when it's not. Because the summer ends. I know we're all looking forward to the Minnesota snow, but the summer ends. We grow up. We actually do age. We go from our little pathway in the woods to a lifelong journey through the world. New environments, emerging middle, late adulthood. We work and play, laugh, cry, contribute to the community. Adoption literacy isn't a threat to anyone out here. Our silence is. And so, as members of this community, this environment, what do you possibly have to offer now that we're not at camp anymore? Well, now you've got this song, this community song worth spreading, and it's in the key of hope. Go sing it throughout the year with the ones that you love and care about, and for the ones that they might be missing or learning how to reconnect with. A lot of people have to be in on it. Minneapolis, you got this. Wherever you are, we got this. I'm telling you from personal experience, adoption literacy is the difference between the village that keeps us buried and the one that brings our possibilities back to life. Which one will you help us become? Thank you.